Welcome back to Reliving Retro season finale.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty excited for this one. We have a special guest on with us, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Hey, everyone, and thanks for having me on the season finale. What a way to finish off a season than with this beloved game. My name is Bill. I am the host of A Gamer Looks at 40 podcast. It's a show that it's basically the history of games as told through the stories and recollections of the everyday people who lived it. Kind of like a documentary style podcast where we go through different games and eras, and every episode is a bunch of different people telling their stories about different games and how they affected their lives, or what they like them, what they don't like them, etc. And it's kind of like this Ken Burns documentary, or like kind of sitting around a campfire. You know, everyone just telling stories about these different games. So the goal is to find the heart and the soul of the medium as opposed to nuts and bolts. So I think it's a fine, good time, and I hope you guys check it out if you haven't already. A Gamer Looks at 40 on Twitter, 40. A Gamer Looks at 40 on Twitter is where all my stuff is. So be sure to check it out. But thanks
100%.
again for having me, guys.
Yeah, of course. I listened to your Electronic Gaming Monthly episode. That one was awesome to have. What was it? It was three guys, right? Three editors.
Yep. It
was
they were all yeah.
Yeah, that was awesome to hear their perspective on kind of games coming out, and they got to play games early, and that was cool to listen to. It reminded me of, I'm sure you've seen the movie Grandma's Boy.
I haven't actually.
Oh, really? Okay. So it's all about these guys that work in a video game company, and it reminded me of like that type of atmosphere where they're in an office playing games all day, and that's kind of
cool.
Stuff. Yeah, so I thought that was awesome.
It was cool getting those guys together. It was Greg Stewart, CJ Johnston, and Dan Shu from the early days of EGM, kind of like late 90s, early 2000s. And Greg's been on the show a bunch of times in different episodes. Yeah. And it was really cool to get three people together. We're going to do it again probably in a few months, maybe probably around the fall area. We want to do it again. So I had more notes. I had so many notes.
That's what you're saying at the end.
Yeah, so many people. It's cool to get them on. It was really fun.
Yeah, it sounded awesome. And I also listened to your Final Fantasy VI episode. And I also listened to your James Bond Jr. episode. So I thought that was pretty funny to hear you complain about a bad game in that episode. And then I'm like, well, it's coming on our show to complain about a bad game. So
yeah, between the main episodes, I have a couple of series. One of them is called Tales from the Bargain Bin, where my brother and I talk. Usually my brother and I talk about the random games we got as kids and whether they're actually little forgotten gems or terrible. And James Bond Jr. is terrible. And a little bit of a preview. My next episode is about Chex Quest.
Nice.
If you've ever played Chex Quest.
I've never heard of it. No.
Chex Quest is a video game that came in every box of Chex in I think it was 96. It's a PC game.
Okay.
And it's basically a Doom clone where you play as a piece of Chex mowing down little green phlegm things. It's actually a surprisingly good Doom clone.
Really?
But it's very charming, cheesy. It's a fun episode. My brother-in-law talk about it. So I need those episodes to break up the larger episodes that take weeks and weeks to record, because for my interviews, I'll record those interviews 3 months in advance. And then
so our podcast is not nearly as professional as Bill's. I mean, yours sounds very, very good. The editing that you put in there. So for the Final Fantasy episode, you had like all the Final Fantasy music and like interwoven between the conversation, and that sounded so awesome. It sounded very, very professional. I was super
appreciate
impressed.
It, man. Thank you. I apologize I don't sound professional here. As I said in the virtual green room, I'm currently broadcasting from the beautiful conference room of a home-to-home suites in Fort Worth, Texas. My family, we were going on vacation this weekend, and we had to leave a day early, so I apologize again if it's ringy. But if you want to hear one of the episodes that's really kind of emblematic of the series, my N64 series is definitely a good one to check out. Really lots of different voices. I think there's 10 or 12 people throughout the episode. I mean, for all the podcasters out there, on your podcast software, you have all different tracks, that you have to lay things in. That has 42 tracks.
Wow.
So that just kind of tell you like the amount of stuff in there. But thank you for the kind words about it. Really appreciate it.
Oh, of course. So I just have a couple kind of get to know you questions, right?
Yeah.
So first off, what was your introduction to gaming? Maybe like the first console you started playing, and like who gave it to you, that kind of stuff.
So my first console was probably, I think I played my uncle's Intellivision before I had an NES. my first console, excuse me, was the Nintendo Entertainment System. I got it in, I want to say 86 or 87, right when it kind of came out.
Cool.
I never had Super Mario Brothers / Duck Hunt. My system did not come with that. So to this day,
okay.
I've never beaten Super Mario Brothers all the way through. Never beaten it. Every year on stream, I try it.
Yeah, I was going to say you have something to look forward to.
Every year, and last year I did on stream, I made it to like 1 or 2, and it was 12:30 at night. I'm like, I punch out Maverick. But I had Black Box Baseball and Rad Racer. And those are the 2 games that I had for my NES. And I have a lot of memories connected with that. You know, it was, I really got into like your Final Fantasy, a little bit Dragon Warrior as the NES went on. And it was a great way for me to connect with people in school, especially that I would never connect with otherwise. For example, there was a kid in our class, Ramon, I'll never forget. And he was one of the cool kids in the class, right? He was like fast and athletic. And he would have never have talked to me if I didn't play Final Fantasy and he did. And we would like talk about, oh, where do you go to do leveling up? And oh, there's a place you always get 4 ogres, you can level real fast. And that was my window or my opportunity to kind of find a place in places where I really didn't have one before. So that's awesome. Kind of my connection with the NES and how that started. So yeah, that's kind of my formative years with it.
I gotta ask, did you have the 3D glasses with the Rad
I did. I sure did. They were terrible. They did not work.
They sucked.
They're horrible. They were not good. Yeah, I did have them though. Wish I still had them. Just walk around town, Rad Racer glasses on. Totally cool.
So, segueing, I guess, into that. So, what are your favorite types of games to play? Like favorite genres, like RPGs or whatever?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of immersive sims. Namely like your Deus Ex, your Bioshocks, Prey and Dishonored. I really love those games. Anything that allows me to kind of push at the edges and experience the game and learn about a game world through play as opposed to cutscenes, and just learn about a game and kind of get immersed into a world. I'm really into. I think that my favorite game I've played though recently was probably Breath of the Wild, which scratched a lot of that itch for me. That idea of just exploring and finding cool things and having a little direction I really latched onto. So immersive sims, I would say, is definitely my favorite genre if I could pick one. But I play mostly old school, like retro stuff these days because I don't have time. I have 2 kids. Now. No time for 100-hour games anymore. So
yeah, we get it. We understand. All right, so this is a Patreon episode. This game was submitted to us from a patron, unfortunately.
Thanks.
If you would like to submit good games, that'd be fantastic. And you can join our Patreon. It's $5 a month to support. It's basically the price of a cup of coffee. And you can join us on there. And just, it's basically a good way to cut the line when it comes to what game we're going to play next. Because every week we draw something random from our big giant master list of games. And instead, every fourth episode, right? Episode 4, 8, and 12 of every season. So 3 times during a season, or once a month. I guess that's easier to say. Once a month, we will we'll pick from the Patreon pool, and it's a much shorter list. So it's a good way to skip the line if you want to get your game played quicker. Now, background info on the game that we played this week. Yaiser had a good time with it, right? We have the playthrough video. It's up on our YouTube right now if you wanted to go check it out.
Not fun.
Come on, buddy, you loved it. This game was released May 31st, 1999 for the Nintendo 64, and it was developed by Titus or Titus. It's Titus.
I think it's Titus. Yeah.
Titus. Titties.
There you go. No, this was rough. I mean, what's pretty surprising about this game is that they were claiming that it had very, very good reviews when it initially was released.
No way.
Yeah. So from what I've read on the game, there was like a registration card when you bought the game, and you could like fill it out and return it for whatever. And apparently 70% or so, 70 or 80% of the registration cards that they received said that the game was strongly recommended. And when all those ages were looked at, it was like the ages between like 6 and 11.
Oh.
So it was all children. That's the reason why it got like quote unquote like good ratings when it first came out. But of course, when it came to like the magazines and everybody else who was out there like critically rating this game, it got awful ratings. It was terrible.
Well deserved.
Yeah, it got a pretty bad reception. We're gonna start it off with story, and Yaiser, do you want to kick it off?
Sure. I don't remember hearing much of a story, but it seemed like Luther was being an asshole, and you had to save the world, right? That's probably the story.
Yeah. So essentially, he locks like 3 of your friends in a digital realm.
Did he say that? Did I hear any of that?
I don't
think
know
so.
that they even say it in the game, but that's basically the story, right?
Oh.
I think it's all in the manual, to be honest with you. And I didn't look up the manual. So I think it's one of those you got to read the manual.
Yeah, for sure.
I usually do, but this game didn't deserve it.
He does. He normally downloads the manual and reads it all.
Yeah. So since there is a story that I didn't know, I'll go 1.5 stars.
Okay.
Bump it up that little half.
1.5. I get that. Now, see, I was a little. I wasn't sure how I felt about the story. I thought it was really weird that he locked them away in a digital realm. Like it's like basically like you're playing a video game of Superman having to go into like a video game to unlock or to free your friends. I thought that it was kind of weird. I also feel like it was kind of a cop out just because of how bad the graphics look. That they're like, well, it's not. This is not real. This is just like a digital realm, you know?
Oh, okay.
Like that's,
Yeah,
I feel like that was them copping out in that sense. I gave story a 1 star because I felt like it's Superman. You can't pull anything like crazier from like the comics or anything like that. Like, I don't know.
Or at least tell you something.
Yeah, they didn't say anything.
Yeah.
This game came out in 1999.
Right.
There were plenty of very good games with stories that came out before then.
Oh yeah.
Bill, you want to?
I'm going to put this at a 2 because the reason I'm not going to put it lower is because there is a threadbare story, and the only story they could come up with was something that would mask the problems of the game. So like you were saying, Rigney, where, there were so many issues with the game. How can we construct this story to mask the fact that it's full of fog and everything looks like crap and it's terrible? So in that vein, you get a point for that. What you don't get a point for is the fact that there's no narrative thrust. And remember how I said I like immersive sims that tell you the stories through experience? That's not this game. That's the exact opposite, actually, of what this experience is. So I give it a 2 because I see what they had to try to do. But you're right, with the Superman license, and evidently there's like all sorts of characters in here. There's Metallo and Darkseid and Parasite. I didn't see any of those characters because I played for half an hour and I said, like Yasser said, screw this. I have time, and I'm every day inches me closer to death. So why would I spend that time on this particular game? No offense, y'all. I try to be prepared for your show, but
no,
I mean,
boy. Yeah, trust me. Yeah, I mean, I gave it about an hour, and that was pretty much all I could play. Yaiser got farther than me in the amount of time that he played.
Oh wow.
But I guess we can kind of just transition here. Let's get into gameplay. I'll start it off with gameplay, I suppose. I gave it a 0.5.
Oh wow.
I thought it was really, really, really bad. I mean, gameplay is the only. I mean, I have other issues with this game for sure, and I'll be like straight up here. This is not the worst game ever. It's not. It's really, really bad. It might be one of the worst like commercially released, and this sold over 500,000 copies.
Oh wow.
For the N64.
Oh yeah, it was a big deal game. I mean, this is all the E3s. It was hyped up for years. Yeah, it's a big deal game.
This was there was I believe a 10-week period between June and July, I think, when it was released, where it was in the top 5 best-selling games for the N64. Mm-hmm. This sold a lot of copies. So I guess for that, it's like it's one of the worst like commercially like successful games in that sense.
That's crazy. What a giant scam that was, huh?
It was pretty bad, yeah.
It's a licensed game, yeah.
But yeah, I gave it a 0.5. I found like nothing about the controls were intuitive whatsoever. They didn't tell you how to do anything in this game.
No, they didn't.
There was no like, oh, here's a tutorial. Here's how to fly. Here's, how to punch. Here's how to take off from when you're standing. I didn't know how to do that. It took me forever to figure out how to take off.
Yep. Same.
That shouldn't be a thing. And the level design was terrible. the fact that it's like, oh, do this maze, which it's not even really a maze. It's just you flying through rings. That's not a maze. But yeah, so you're flying through rings and then you go do something else for 10 seconds. It literally is like the directions of what you're supposed to do in that level. It pops up for a second and you're like, oh, what do I have to do? And then the clock is ticking down from 10 seconds and you're just like, okay.
Great.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so funny. You're like mentioning all the things I was talking shit about in the playthrough video.
It's so bad. Like, I mean, yeah, I could go on and on. It got a 0.5 for me. It's easily, like, I had to force myself to continue to play it for an hour just to feel like I played enough of it.
Yeah.
Yaiser?
That seems pretty fair. I'm gonna give it 1 star, only because I think the controls while you're flying, I feel like flying with the joystick, it felt okay, I guess, for flying through rings.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was able to control it until you like try to cut a corner real quick and get caught.
And you get clipped.
And then he just stands up in the air and stops flying.
And you're like, oh, how do I start flying again?
Yeah, very fucking frustrating. But yeah, I thought at least if you didn't crash into shit, flying felt okay. So I'll give it a little higher than the 0.5 and go all the way to 1.
Yeah, I was debating. I'm like, I can't give this a 0 because I know there's worse games out there, but I'm gonna give it pretty low. Bill, what did you give it?
I gave it a 1.5, and because I think control is the main thing that sinks this game. For all the reasons you guys just said, the reason that's not like a 0.5 or a 1 is that it does function as a game, right? The controls as designed do function as controls. When I hit up, I don't go down. If I hit right, I don't go left, right? It's not objectively broken, but it's certainly not fun. And it's amazing how it takes the one thing the N64 was designed to do well, which is fly around in 3D space, like navigate. That's what that system is for. It was designed to do that. Nintendo required developers to make use of that because they built it. It was a requirement for games to be made on that console. It could not handle that task. I agree with Yaiser. I mean, I was able to get through the rings and get through some of the ring puzzles, and I think I made it as far as you did. I watched your 5-minute recap on YouTube or on Twitter, and I think I made it as far as you did. The fighting, the one section where you're actually fighting the bad guys, the tutorial on how to fight is inexcusably bad. It is
so bad.
You're just flailing around in space. Keep in mind, Rigney, you mentioned this game was released in 1999. You know it was released in 1998? Ocarina of Time.
Yep.
This was figured out.
Right?
Like, this was figured out. Like, we knew how to do these things.
Ocarina of Time, Banjo-Kazooie.
Yeah, we had kind of figured out 3D space by this point. And the fact that you can't just hit a Z button and lock on and hit someone in the face is such an oversight. It's really a shame. Yeah, so 1.5 is where I put those controls for me. That's what sinks this game, and I too took forever to figure out how to stand up or how to use the frost breath properly. It just too much friction. Yeah, I just lucked out and got far enough. So
yeah, eventually you hit all the buttons on the controller. One of them's gonna work.
I just stood there and hit the buttons, like process of elimination.
Yeah,
that's literally what I did. So
yeah, and then games shouldn't be like that. You know what I mean? It should be at least intuitive. If it's not going to give you the direction on how to perform a task, it should at least be somewhat intuitive. Like, okay, like maybe it's B. I don't know, but like, it should definitely be intuitive, and it's not with this game at any point.
No, just real bad.
All right, Bill, you want to start off with visuals?
Yeah, so visuals, I give it a 2 on visuals, because I didn't rate it too much lower. I want to actually rate it a little higher because the N64, a lot of these games have to be graded on a curve. The N64 is not known for wonderful, beautiful visuals for the most part. They have not really aged well, and we'll talk about that as far as age goes. But I see what they're trying to do, right? It was, again, the virtual world, the fog, they tailored the story around these terrible visuals. The fog is horrendous in this game where you can barely see what's going on in front of you, lots of blind corners to fly into, and the geometry, like you said, Yaiser, where you're constantly getting hung up on geometry. And it's extraordinarily bland for even an N64 game. And there's really nothing, it's not good, it's not pretty. But again, the N64 era was not a terribly beautiful time for games. Depending on the game you're talking about, there was a lot of gems that are actually really beautiful, but not this. Oh no,
Not
it's
this one.
I'd rather watch Star Fox, to be honest with you, than play through this one. I don't know, and basically the same kind of thing when it comes to blocky pixels and geometric figures.
Yeah, I agree. Yaiser?
I'm gonna go a little lower than that. I'm gonna land at 1.5 stars.
Okay.
The first time I fired the game up, and it pans to like Lex and like the portal or whatever.
Yeah.
I laughed out loud at like, oh okay,
okay, I get it.
Okay, it's this bad.
I get
Jesus, I can't believe that it was released in 1999. I didn't know that until you said that. That's just unreal. And the back there was there anything in the background like the distance of like your view was like
no,
you couldn't
Nope.
there was nothing. It was just all blank, right?
Yeah, no, like Bill said, like they added that to kind of make up for the fact that they weren't going to put.
That's the fog.
That's the fog. Yeah, they added
yeah.
that fog to kind of just mask the fact that they weren't going to get real detailed with this game.
So terrible.
I gave it a 2, which was a lot higher than I thought I was going to give it going into it. My biggest gripes, I think, with this game is just it's obviously the environment sucks. It's awful. And certain levels, like the second part, right? You go through the rings and the first, I don't even know if they're like stages or whatever. You go through the first ring maze, whatever you want to call it. And then when you complete that, you have to go pick up cars before they hit pedestrians. The only reason why I even knew what I was supposed to do is because everything else on this map was flat. Like it was like you were playing with a Superman action figure on one of those like
the carpet
car carpets. That's exactly what it looked like.
That's so funny.
And it shouldn't look like there should be raised buildings and stuff like that.
Be, dude.
Give me a little bit more time than 10 seconds to find the car that's going to hit the people. And this game had potential, and it was just awful because of I don't know if it was lazy, if it was pushed. I don't know what happened in the studio, but
man.
I do know that there was a PlayStation version and it never came out. This PlayStation version looked so much better. Like the environment looked way better. The controls looked way better. But it never came out because by the time they were done, like almost done, like developing it, Titus had lost the license with Warner Brothers.
Well,
yeah,
get fucked.
It's unfortunate, but so I gave it a 2. I actually thought the one thing that saved it from getting 1 or 1.5 for me was I actually didn't think that Superman looked awful.
I guess not.
I mean, he could look better, but for the rest of the game, I was just like, you know what? Superman at least looks decent.
Yeah, he looks like a Superman. It's also based off the animated series, if I remember correctly. So again, you have a little bit of leeway there because it's based off a comic book or comic series and or cartoon series. So you have a little bit of play there, but I agree with you. It doesn't look terribly good. And as far as the developers go, things like this fail for a number. Usually, it's a lot of factors that cause things to fail, either time or money. I rarely think ineptitude, though, because I'm always on the side of developers to a certain extent. I'm not on the side of publishers. Screw publishers. But the people making this stuff, I'm always on the side of. So this is just a confluence of bad ideas and I think rushed decisions. But this is 2 years in development.
Yeah, that's what I looked up too. Yeah,
they didn't have like 6 months to rush it out for holiday. They had 2 years.
They started in 1995.
Oh my god!
And I think
or 1997. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I think a big part of it too is that the N64 was notoriously hard to develop for it too. So maybe they just didn't have the support and the expectations were high, and this is what they could produce. And
the thing that I'm wondering though is if this was like Rare, this is a way better game, right?
Yeah.
I think so. I think they would take an. Yeah, I'm sorry, sir. Go ahead.
Just saying, I don't think it could be worse, but yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it would have been better. Yeah, I think they're more competent developers. I think, Rare's pedigree would suggest that would be the case. But I mean, I don't know. It seems like a lot of things probably happened here. I'd love to know the full story, and I bet you there's a full story out there somewhere on the internet. The story of Superman 64 that I just didn't watch.
There's got to be a why is it so bad kind of documentary about it.
Yeah. Somebody dove deep.
It's rough to look at though. All right, I'll kick it off with sound. I gave it a 1. I think the sound is pretty bad. I wouldn't mind the music that's being played, except it doesn't change. That's the same music throughout the whole game.
The whole entire game.
The whole game. And then the sound effects are just kind of meh. I mean,
yeah.
Again, it's nothing like super annoying, but it's just, it certainly doesn't impress me at all. And the constant, it's the same track over and over and over again. So yeah, there's not a lot of ingenuity there.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna agree with you and go with 1
There you
as
go.
well. Like you said, there's just I
Nothing
don't
there.
think I've ever played a game that just repeats the same like 8 bars maybe.
Yeah.
Just over and over and over and over. That's pretty awful, and I don't remember the sound effects being any good. So
it's certainly one of those things where it makes it like, if it wasn't already a hard game to sit and play for an hour, the music certainly doesn't help. You're going to want to hit the mute button on this one immediately and throw on some of your own music. But
yeah.
it's pretty bad. Bill, what'd you give it?
I gave it actually a 2.5. And I'll explain why. Because it didn't annoy me or get in the way. It's
Makes
kind of
sense.
what I would say, like workman-like, just control sounds of thwapping and the repetitive music didn't really get in my craw too much. It just kind of went through my brain. And I think sometimes for games like this, that's fine. It was there. It's really nothing to comment about. I had no idea it's the same song throughout the entire game. I figured I just didn't play enough to get any new themes. I was going to actually look up the OST, but I'm like, I don't need to look up the OST to this. So again, no offense for your show. I like to be prepared, but I was like, I got the taste of it. I got the flavor.
Yeah. We're not going to be offended.
No.
Yeah. I try to be prepared. 2.5 for me. It's fine, but it didn't offend me, and nothing too grating. I've heard a lot worse. I would think James Bond Jr. has worse sound than this.
It's funny. You played a little clip of that James Bond Jr. and then I think you and your brother both went off on the guy that was it GameFAQs that you were reading the reviews from? Yeah, and he was like soundtrack's pretty good. And you and your brother were like, you're wrong. It's terrible.
Objectively wrong by any metric. This is an incorrect statement, sir.
What's funny though is when you played it, I was just like, this isn't that bad. It's got a little something, but if it just repeats, then I totally get how that would be the most annoying thing.
5-second loop. It's terrible. And this one again, because that was more chiptune-y. This at least has a little more orchestration to it, and it wasn't as piercing. Like James Bond Jr. hits a piece of my brain that causes headaches and migraines and eye twitches. So
I think that's probably why I was hard on this one, is because video game music is something I look forward to a lot. It's something that makes a game great to me. I think one of the biggest reasons why I love Donkey Kong Country so much is because of its amazing soundtrack. And the same thing with Castlevania. I think those two games in particular have some of the best soundtracks video games have to offer. And I think that those games stick with me a lot more because of their soundtracks. So I really look forward to just soundtracks in general for whenever I fire up a game. And the fact that the volume on it was low, so you could kind of barely hear the music, and it just wasn't anything crazy. And the fact that it was the same song throughout the entire game is just kind of like, it's pretty disappointing. But but no, I mean, I totally get what you're saying also, because I've even taken that route with other games that we've talked about, where I'm like, oh yeah, the sound wasn't annoying at all. I think I did that with Stuntman. I'm like, the sound, it didn't bother me. You know what I mean? So I gave it like a 2.5. So totally get that frame of thought.
Sure.
But Bill, do you want to kick us off for aged here?
Yes, I would love to. I put aged, ready for this? You're gonna love this. I put it at a 3.
What?
And here's why. I have a very specific reason why. I hate to throw off your metrics, because I'm sure this is going to be low on you guys as well. But this game is as bad as it. This game did not get worse over time. It certainly did not get better. It has stayed the same level of terrible over the years. When we play this game in 100 years, it will still be the same level as bad. This won't be one of those games that people like unearth in 50 years, like, oh, remember Superman 64? This is actually not so bad. I actually went into this with the mindset of, maybe this isn't as bad as AVGN and Game Grumps and everyone has said online. Maybe this is salvageable. I had an experience with a different podcast a few years ago. I played Friday the 13th on the NES. And that's another one that was been AVGN to death. And I played it and I'm like, this is actually pretty decent. Like, it's not great, but some good ideas here. I said they were doing this. Actually was kind of fun. this is not that game. And this game, if you had a low bar that you're not going to like rise from, then there's no. So that's why I give it a 3, because this is a stalemate. This is a dead isotope that is not ever going to degrade or increase. So
Yeah.
that's why
No,
I give it a 3.
yeah, I totally get that point. Actually, and I'll read some reviews that we had about this game, but a few people did actually make that same exact point, is that this game didn't age poorly because it already sucked. Like, it sucked when it came out. So I agree. I definitely agree with that. However, I did give it a 1.5 because I do think it was pretty bad. And I don't know if that's necessarily to the like how bad it aged. But I looked at it like this, like what games were out at the time, and just seeing what other games came out around that time or even before that, and for what was capable at the time, I mean, they should have came up with something way better than this. And I know it's not necessarily aged. I couldn't find myself to give it higher than a 2 in anything.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Man, I'm tempted to do a show first here.
Oh boy.
And I'm not gonna say it out loud. I'm gonna talk it out first. Let's talk this out, okay?
Why don't you talk it out, buddy?
So it probably was just as bad back then, right? I do understand that what you're saying, but like, and again, what you're saying, so many of those games that came out before then or around the same time have aged so well, like perfectly, like they don't even feel like old games.
Yeah.
And like how crazy insane games are now, I feel like it aged terribly. It's got to be worse now than it was then, right? With how games are now.
I mean, I guess it depends on who you're asking. If you're asking like the 6 to 7 year old, there's 6, 7, 8 year olds, or whoever it was that were filling out those registration cards, then yeah, maybe it did get worse. But if you're asking the magazines and the reviewers that reviewed it then it's about the same, I guess.
I think I'm gonna do it just because I 100% think.
Yeah.
Don't waste your time with this game. It aged 0 stars. Show
wow.
first. 0.
Okay.
Don't play the game.
Yeah,
like it.
That's fair.
Don't do it.
I'll take it. I mean, it's harsh, but like, I like it. I appreciate that you came on here too, Bill, with more of like a, it's not as it's bad, but it's not as bad as like, everybody's saying it is. I like the fact that we had a little bit of differing opinions when it comes to the sound and the age and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, for the most part, we all agreed the gameplay was awful. But
yeah, it's terrible.
It's the worst game I personally have ever played.
I get it.
It's up there. I mean, it's up there. I can't really think of any worse at the moment. I'm sure I have, but yeah, this is up there. This is
I was gonna say, like, of there are certain games that I've seen like clips of that I've never actually played myself. Like, you brought up AVGN and how he kind of has this ability to make a game seem way worse than it is. But
yeah,
I don't know how a game could be worse than like Big Rigs. I don't know if you've ever seen that episode or not.
I have, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that game is like, it's broken. You can't even play it. You don't even race the car you're supposed to be racing. You're driving through barriers, and it's like that game is not even playable. I don't know how that got on shelves.
Yeah.
Like, so that was a game that came out, like, that came to my head when I was thinking, like, what games are worse than this? Because I can't give this like a 0 across all the, like, across the board here.
Yeah.
But,
it functions as a game. Like, it does function. And I mean, I suppose with the controls, like, you have to read the manual to get the sense of it. But like you said, even intuitively, even functioning those controls or utilizing those controls, it's not fun. Like, just because something works doesn't mean it's fun. You know what I mean? Like,
that's the whole point of the game.
Yeah, can openers are work, but they're not fun. You know what I mean? That's not the litmus test, really. So
I don't know.
I agree, man.
I like working a can opener.
Yeah, I mean, you probably would have rather opened cans for. You probably would have rather opened up cans for 35 minutes.
Oh, definitely.
There is something satisfying about the rink of a good can opener, right?
Do you ever use one of the electric ones? You just kind of stick the can.
Manual. Just got to He-Man that thing. That's it.
No,
my parents had an electric one when I was a kid, but I was always afraid it was gonna like cut my finger off, so I never used it.
I'm afraid it would just drop the can. Like, that's my thing.
It somehow holds on. I don't know.
See how good this game is? We were talking about can openers, and that's where this conversation leads. Superman 64.
More fun.
Get you to can openers.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's basically how it works. It's kind of amazing. All right, so we're gonna go through here and just kind of go over the totals of what we got. So Yaiser was the lowest on this game with an overall of 1, a flat 1. I had a 1.2, and Bill was the highest on a 2.2.
Okay, I'll take that. I think that's fair.
Yeah. I mean, out of 100, Yaiser's at a 10%. I'm at a 12%, and Bill is at a 22%.
Nice.
Okay. Yeah, that's again. I stand by that.
So last week we played probably our group collective best rated game, which was Fable, where we are at 88%, 92%, and 90%. So it's quite the dip here to go to 12, 22, and
well, yeah, Fable's like an all-time great though.
Yeah, it is pretty good. All right, so next we are going to be randomizing the game to kick off season 2. So we're pretty excited about this one. This is going to be a longer game. So this is how we have our episodes kind of set up here. This is the season finale. So next week we actually will be doing a season 1 recap where we rate. Well, we have already rated. We will be ranking the 12 games that we played throughout the first season. And not necessarily due to our rankings, but just, whether we wanted to play them again and we actually went back to them, or just however we enjoyed them, right?
Yeah, it'll be cool to see where our ratings stack up with our rankings.
With our rankings, yeah. So we're gonna rank the 12 games that we played, and we'll talk about that kind of stuff. And we are going to be randomizing a game here.
Cool.
Ready? Yeah, it takes a little bit. All right, here we go. This is a good one. Ooh, and I'm pretty excited. It's a big game, and I've never played it before.
Oh.
We have a Super Nintendo game based on time travel.
Say it.
Oh boy.
It was released in 1992.
No, not what I'm thinking of then.
Oh, I think I know.
Published by Nintendo. And it's an action adventure game. Any guesses, Bill?
You said time. Eventually felt like Chrono Trigger, but that's 95, I think, 94, 95. So time, Super Nintendo, published by Nintendo. So first party, I don't know. It's going to slap me in the head. 92. I don't know.
A Link to the Past.
Oh,
nice.
Dude. I should guess. Come on, Bill. What's the matter?
Sick.
I knew Yaiser was going to think it was Chrono Trigger. That's why I set it up at the time.
That's why I perked up. And that's terrible because I'm in the midst of recording for a Legend of Zelda retrospective that's going to take 3 months. So I've been nothing but Zelda for the last month and a half, 2 months of recording interviews. So how I did that is beyond my recollection. That's awesome, man. That's fantastic. That's fun.
Yeah. I've never played it.
I never played it all the way through. No.
Yeah. Wow. You guys are in for a treat.
Yeah. Cool. I've started it, and it's never. I'm not big on open world Zelda, stuff like that. I barely played a little bit of Ocarina at a time. I'm not a big Zelda guy. I never played them when I was growing up, so it has no nostalgia for me either. So this is going to be a god honest review here, because I've never, like I said, I've never really played it before, and I have no nostalgia for it. So it's literally just going to be what I think of the game in my first legitimate playthrough.
Sweet.
So yeah, I'm definitely excited to play through this one, and we have a guest on for that one also, and his name is Lord Hoyle on TikTok, and so he's going to be joining us for a Link to the Past, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
How long is it supposed to be?
How long does the game take?
Yeah,
it's about a 20-hour game.
Sweet.
Yeah, so we have 2 weeks really to play that one.
Yeah,
and it's gonna be nice to have a an extended period of time to kind of knock down one of the biggest games in the Super Nintendo library. It's usually considered the best game in the entire library. I don't know, Bill, do you have a differing opinion on that, or?
Oh, I like Link to the Past a lot. I don't even know if I'd rank it though in my top 10 of the library for Super Nintendo, but I love it a lot. But that's just being a victim of being on probably one of the best lineups in video game history.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I mean, my favorite game of all time is Mega Man X. That's my number one favorite. That's just the game I love to play the most. That's it. But I have Link to the Past ranking the Zelda series would probably be 2 or 3 depending on the day. My number one for that is Breath of the Wild. I adore that game. Please at me. That means you're listening and you care. So by all means. Second on that list is usually Link to the Past, and third is Link's Awakening. So
Okay. Where's Ocarina of Time fall?
Honestly, Ocarina of Fall, it's not even top 5 for me.
Oh,
I
really?
like
Okay.
Ocarina, but I don't love it.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't
think
play it
that's
as a
fair.
kid, so I have no nostalgia for it. So
There you go.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna read a couple reviews here from the Hive Mind. We have a Hive Mind of people that play the game with us, and then also offer up some of their reviews. So
Nice.
so Ramble Rick here, he gave story a 2, gameplay a 1.5, visuals, sound, and age. He all gave a 3. So I mean, not terrible ratings there. He said this game is just awful. The story was just some blanket scenario. The controls were terrible. It didn't look horrendous, but it wasn't amazing either. And then the same could be said for the sound. He goes, as for how it aged, I guess so. I mean, when you start as garbage, it's kind of hard to get worse.
Right.
Which is exactly what you were saying, Bill. So I thought that was a good point. And then Hi-Fi Dojo said story was a 2, gameplay was a 1.5, visuals was a 2, sounds was a 3, and age was a 1.5. Give it a 2 overall. He said, and I quote, calling this game a shit entry for the N64 would be merciful.
Good.
That's great.
Yeah. Obviously not a very well liked game, but you know, I really do think it had potential to be a lot better.
Oh yeah.
I mean, if it just a couple different mechanics, just like the lock-on system for bad guys, like that would be nice. I don't know, maybe not so many bugs. You're falling through platforms, getting clipped on the sides of buildings or bridges or whatever you have to fly under.
Yeah,
it's terrible.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it needed a little bit more polishing, but you get what you get sometimes, I guess. Bill, we tend to ask our guests to recommend a game for us to throw onto our master list. Do you have one in your mind?
I do, and you told me about this before we started recording, and I'm thinking like, oh, should I be evil? But you guys went through the ringer on this one, honestly. So I'm not gonna. I'm gonna give you a game that I like quite a bit. I haven't gone back to, and I'm nervous to go back to because I'm not sure if I'll like it as much. That's Metroid Prime.
Okay.
I'm gonna give you guys Metroid Prime. It's a game I remember really liking when it first came out. But again, considering it's kind of GameCube, I'm just lots of scanning. I'm just curious how that game holds up under kind of modern sensibilities. And I'd love for you guys to play it. It's a good game. It's a base level good game. I'm just curious how good it is these days.
Another weird admission here from me. I've never played any of the Metroids.
No, me either.
Wow. Okay.
Yep. I've always wanted to play Super Metroid. I've just never had a chance to, really. I never owned it as a kid, and then when I got into collecting, the cart that I picked up didn't work for whatever reason. So I was never really able to play it. However, it is on the SNES Classic that I have, so I really don't have a reason to not play it.
Yeah, it's on the Switch as well. If you have a Switch, it's there in the Nintendo.
Yeah.
That's actually how I'll be playing That's actually how I'll be playing Link to the Past.
I was
on the
gonna
Switch.
ask you if it was on there. Cool.
Yep.
Because that'll be nice.
You almost had an excuse for it because I was almost going to give you Super Metroid, but I'm like, he's probably played that before. So I said Metroid Prime. So there you go.
Yeah, never played it.
There you go.
But I'm excited though because I've heard great things about the Metroid series.
Yeah,
it's beautiful. It's my second favorite game. I adore everything about Super Metroid. I think it's the best in the entire franchise. Still, even with Metroid Dread, I think it's better than Metroid Dread.
Wow.
I have my reasons.
I've heard Dread was really good too.
Yeah, Dread's great, but Dread's good. But Super Metroid is chef kiss.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. You want to go ahead and plug your stuff one more time?
Yeah. Once again, the name of the show is A Gamer Looks at 40. It's a documentary style podcast with lots of different stories from different people, just talking about how games have changed their lives, impacted them, why they like them, why they don't like them, and just a lot of experiences, right? It's kind of a collection of people's personal experiences with video games, kind of told in this like Ken Burns documentary style. Everything's, it's a good time, I think. I hope. It takes forever to put together, so I sure do hope it's good, and I hope you enjoy it well. Give it a shot. Twitter at A Gamer Looks at 4040 on Twitter. There's a link tree in the bio. All the podcasty stuff is there, so do the podcasty stuff like you do with everything else.
Yeah, if you guys are listening to podcasts all day, then 100% check out the podcast. I honestly, like, I was just like, okay, I'm gonna listen to the Electronic Gaming Monthly, because I was like, that sounds really interesting to have the editors on. And then I ended up listening to 3 episodes in a row, and I was just like, oh yeah, I have to leave work now, actually.
That's very kind of you to say. I appreciate that, man. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, it's very, very well done. So I 100% recommend it. But that's gonna be it from us for this week. Next week we are going to be doing our recap show. So join us for that. I look forward to seeing, maybe leave some comments in the YouTube sections to just be like, here's our list of the top 12 games that you played or whatever. So I want to see what you guys think, or maybe just give us your top 3 or whatever if you haven't played them all. And then the week after that, we will be playing A Link to the Past for the Super Nintendo, and I'm super pumped. I get 2 weeks on that.
Hell yeah, that'll be dope.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome. Thank you again, Bill, for joining us. We really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks
again for having me.
Of course. See you later, guys.
Peace.